Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Rosenblatt. I'm the program director of JFI, and I am very happy to be doing this Q&A for the wonderful film that you just saw, 6 Minutes to Midnight. And I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Kellen Jones, who plays Corporal Willis. He is a critically acclaimed and award-winning actor and director, originally from North Wales. We have Eddie Izzard, who plays Thomas Miller, and Eddie wears many hats. She's a stand-up comedian, thespian, film actor, marathon runner, and activist, just to name a few. Her stand-up comedy tours have included Live at the Ambassadors, Definite Article, Glorious, Dress to Kill, Circle, Stripped, and Force Majeure. And last but not least, we have Andy Goddard. He's a British director and screenwriter, best known for writing and directing his first feature debut, Set Fire to the Stars. And he's also directed 5 episodes of Downton Abbey. Thank you all for being here and welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for making this wonderful, thrilling thriller, very entertaining. It was a real homage to British spy cinema. And I also saw several Hitchcock references in it, which I'll get to a little bit later. You all had several roles in the film. Andy, you were the director and also a writer. Kellen, writer, actor, and executive producer. And Eddie, writer, lead actor, and also an executive producer. I was wondering if you could start by talking about, since you all worked on the screenplay together, can you talk about your creative process?
Yes, indeed. I'll dive in if that's okay, Cal. I'll start. It was about 10 years ago. There's a little town called Bexhill-on-Sea on the south coast of England. Our film is set in Bexhill-on-Sea. It's a real town, and it's really there. It's very near Hastings, Battle of Hastings. Some people in America might have heard of. Brighton is a better known town. So anyway, south coast, south of London. Seaside towns, you know, they have all that kind of seaside town thing that goes with them. But I found out, as I'd grown up in this town and I got a certain amount of profile, I was asked to be a patron of the museum. And Julian Porter, who's the curator there, showed me this badge. It's a blazer badge from a girls' school that was in Bexhill. Now, Bexhill had at a certain point in the 20s and the 30s, or the first part of the century, it really was very much linked to aristocracy, and the Queen and her sister, Princess Margaret, they'd both stayed at hotels there, and it was like a place to go, kind of glamorous, niche aristocracy hangout, big fur coats, all that kind of thing happening in the first part of the 1900s. And so lots of schools set up there, usually from people who were working somewhere in the Empire, the British Empire in days of old, and they'd leave their children in boarding schools in Bexhill-on-Sea. That seemed like a thing to do. One of these schools was a finishing school. It wasn't actually a boarding school for kids. It was more like a finishing school. And in fact, it was German girls were staying there to learn English. And as a way of learning English was a language that's used in American Britain. And in the 30s, it became very Nazified. I mean, it actually started in the 30s, so maybe it was all part of this link. Because Hitler, you may not know this, but Hitler felt that the English, particularly as opposed to all of the British, but the English were supposed to be Aryans and were supposed to be linked to his idea of Aryan, and there was going to be a world domination, which we were supposed to be included in, if that all worked out. And so a number of members of British aristocracy were very into that. We had the black shirts, which was a guy called Oswald Mosley. He married a woman called Diana Mitford, who was from aristocracy, and Hitler was at their wedding as a witness. So there's a whole load of kind of Nazi links. Every country had their fascists, their Nazis, and ours were there. And these girls were very much linked to the Nazi high command. And goddaughter, Himmler's goddaughter was there. Von Ribbentrop, who became the German ambassador, he was there, ambassador to Britain. And so they were very linked up, and they used to go up to the German embassy in London, and we've got pictures from the Times of them all doing the Nazi salute in London when visiting dignitaries from Germany were there. So this school existed, and the girls were there, and the blazer badge had the English Union Jack on it, or the British Union Jack, and the Nazi swastika on it. That these two flags, and I saw a photocopy, a black and white photo of this badge, and I just thought these two flags right next to each other, Augusta Victoria College for girls on it, Bexhill-on-Sea. There was a film in that, so that's where it started, and I started from that blazer badge, and I started trying to develop characters. And I wasn't experienced at writing, but I knew, I broke it into Pinewood Studios when I was 15, so films was always where I wanted to be. Lots of dramatic films I've been doing over the last 2 decades. So I was trying to get this going, but not getting hugely fast. Certain characters were in there. The main character, I wanted to be British and German, English and German, but I hadn't got that far. But I had done films with Kellen, a film called Castles in the Sky before, and I knew Kellen was now writing his own script. And bizarrely, and if we hadn't done this meeting, Cal, I don't know if it would have quite taken off like it took, but I was in Cannes Film Festival. Him and the guys from Maddest Birds, the production company, were at Cannes Film Festival, and they just walked past the boat that I was on, because everyone has a boat in the Cannes Film Festival in order to do promotion and publicity and to hang out in. And so this boat in the jetty, all tied up in the jetty, and I was sitting at the back of it, and having done my press, and they walked by, Kellen walked by with the Maddest Birds guys. So Kel, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start with, I don't have a boat and didn't have a boat, but we did, Eddie broke into Pinewood aged 15, 16. We broke onto Eddie's yacht in Cannes. But the jumping off point, Eddie and I had done a film called a Gillis McKinnon film together called Castles in the Sky about Robert Watson Watt, the invention of the radar. So we got on very well there. And also Eddie's sort of forensic knowledge of, British and military history. And I know it's a great passion of his. And Eddie showed this badge, like you said, with the swastika and the Union Jack. And I said, you've got to show Andy, our producer, said, you've got to show Andy this badge because it's just a mind-bending picture. You don't see those images together. It's so shocking. Your brain just does a little jiggle when you sort of see it. And from that point, Eddie talked about this character. He knew the character was going to be called Thomas Miller, dual heritage, and we had a great affection for, as you said earlier, Jay, those old British spy movies, those Ealing films, things like we talked about 39 Steps and Ipcris File and all the sort of references. We thought, what could we do as a great jumping off point of why are these girls there? There's the badge, exactly. You can see
that is the thing I saw. That was the black and white photocopy, whatever it is. Just those two flags. Just so you know, that's all we had to start off with.
Wow. So we thought, what a great premise of a school. Young children who are somewhere that people don't expect them to be at a time that we know in history is very close to the Second World War. So we got together and started writing, thought, how far can we take this story, make it thrilling, tonally. Eddie said very quickly, it's Nazis by the seaside, Nazis by the seaside. It's sort of, which I became
That's the hashtag.
Hashtag. But by saying that, we sort of, when we think of kind of those British films, we think of, British seaside, stripy deck chairs, handkerchiefs on heads knotted, and ice cream and all that, as well as this sort of the aristocracy in war and all those sort of meshes of tones coming together. So Eddie and I would meet up in different hotels, usually where Eddie was filming in different places on different movies.
Also in Bexhill and Eastbourne, the place where it was set, Bexhill and Eastbourne, we wrote in there, wrote whole drafts in the Eastbourne Grand Hotel.
The whole draft, the Eastbourne Grand Hotel has become, we should make that a pilgrimage going forward, Eddie, because we should have a suite there, because so much came where Eddie would be sort of acting out sort of fight sequences, sort of throttling me while I'll be sort of typing away, and vice versa. We'd be playing all the characters together. So we knew that we had this sort of story. We wrote a very early couple of drafts together, and we were always writing for Judi Dench, because Judi and Eddie have this relationship. They worked together before, and we just thought, how can we put this character that we need to sort of have affection for, then the idea, it's like, you know, Henry Fonda playing a baddie. Do you know what I mean? Judi Dench is sort of the few actors who can sort of shoulder that weight of that responsibility and that line. So we had that in our heads. And leading on to, once we had a very early draft in hand and we were thinking, who's going to direct this film? Andy Goddard, who Andy and I had made a film previously before that Eddie had seen. And Andy and I think we were just having a coffee somewhere, having a catch up. He'd just been in America making a movie and then doing a couple of the massive shows. And I was just telling you about it, wasn't I, Andy? I was just sort of saying, Eddie and I are writing this, and this is what it's about, and it's really got something in the badge. And I think you just said, where do I buy my popcorns? And Eddie Izzard, Bexel-on-Sea, Nazis by the seaside. It just sounds, you know, and then you riffed on those sort of films, and you know, the door opened to you then, didn't it, mate? Where you said,
yeah, you know, I mean, like Eddie, you know, I'd also made a film with you. So I'd made a film with Cal. We'd worked together as actor and director and as writers together on Set Fighting Stars. I just love the way we worked together. So the idea of revisiting something with Kellen and with Eddie on board as well, that excited me. At the same time, I guess the appeal, like Eddie said, it was this very strange kind of truth is stranger than fiction kind of story that was like a kind of footnote in our modern history about this girls' school that I'd never heard about. And I just loved the sort of the skullduggery of it all. And as you say, I was getting great whiffs of British spy movies and, you know, Hitchcock's 39 Steps, which I know Kellen and Eddie had already talked about. There's a film called The Spy in Black, Powell and Pressburger movie, that kind of was in my head as well. And all those kind of Bolton Brothers movies, Brighton Rock as well. And it's that lovely kind of mashup between something that's particularly British, even English perhaps, which is that kind of pre-war British seaside mixed with this kind of darker European flavor. And that just kind of set bells and whistles off in my head. And it was the idea of doing something that was like hopefully a gripping entertainment in the great tradition of a kind of Graham Greene potboiler, but something that, you know, would also hopefully say something meaningful about how we treat, you know, our fellow man. So that was, it was a no-brainer, really. Great.
Yeah, I definitely saw elements of 39 Steps, that vaudeville scene where he meets, Miller meets the boss, you know, and the
colonel.
The colonel, yeah.
Colonel. And also saw The Man Who Knew Too Much, you know, when Miller's hands are filled with blood, and you know, when he touches the guy that's dead. Even North by Northwest. I mean, maybe I'm reading into it, but I think with the plane coming down, and also, I think I read somewhere.
Keep talking, Jay. All this is going to go on the poster.
Yeah, yeah, just come on.
Well, actually, maybe I'm reading into this. I read somewhere, Eddie, that you do an amazing James Mason imitation.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, of course, James Mason, North by Northwest, and so yeah, it's more Hitchcock. It's more 39 Stepsy. The Wrong Man, Robert Donat was in that version, which Hitchcock did. But yeah, definitely The Wrong Man. But also the fact that he's English and he's English and British and German. This was an important thing, so that our story was not, as they have been over many years, British good, Germans bad, or Allies good, Germans bad. But in fact, ideas can be good and ideas can be bad. And, you know, here we're dealing with toxic right-wing ideas, and with, you know, Trump bouncing off the walls as he has been since before he got into be president, through all the presidency, and even now he's still bouncing off the walls. That idea of lying as a tool of politics that can be used, and that people say, yeah, those lies sound fantastic, we'll just go with that, even though it's absolutely not true, and running forward. I mean, the Jewish Bolshevik conspiracy is an insane idea if you think about it, because they were claiming, and this is not, I know this is a Jewish festival, but they were claiming, the Nazis were claiming the Jewish people were all about money. We know that Jewish people were, some had money, some didn't have money. It was a complete cross-section, just like any other group of people. And then the Soviets were all supposed to be about not money. So how in hell were they getting together and supposed to have a conspiracy? It was a nonsense from the beginning. The whole area idea was a nonsense. So we wanted to push into this, that this was just, ideas can be good and ideas can be bad. The people, their nationalities, what they be, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it. If you analyze humanity, it really has nothing to do with German, British, Russian, even religions, Jewish, Christian. It's nothing to do with it. It's just people, characters strong, characters weak. And that's hopefully what comes out of this, out of our message.
So your character being German and British, that he kind of encapsulated this, right?
Yes, it's. I love this thing. I don't know why anyone hasn't done it before. Because if you're German and British, of course, the British don't trust you. You see the Colonel's attitude to him. He really hates him, and he has to put up with him because he can be German. He can pass as a German. Whereas from the German point of view, he's half, his mother's English. So no one's going to trust him. I feel this character has legs because the war unfolds and no one would trust this person, but they can play both sides of the coin. And in the end, they're after, just positive ideas. Again, it's about ideas. But when it comes to nationalism and war, it comes into what is what country you're from, because you must be on that side, even if you totally disagree with the ideas of these people. All German people are supposed to be bad. If you watch actually Casablanca, you'll see the guy playing the full-blown Nazi. He's German, yes, but a good guy who got out of Nazi Germany because he wanted to act and was a decent guy. You'll see the other guy who plays the Czech, and he's also German. And the guy who plays the Nazi was his friend and got him out of Nazi Germany and into Britain and got him his visas so he could exist there. So the two of those are actually friends, even though they play complete opposites in that film. So, again, it's got nothing to do with nationality, religion, anything. It's all about strong character people and weak character people. That's what humanity is, if you look at it all the way through as a cross section.
Yeah, I thought that was a great touch, especially when the girls at the school understand the German. They're putting him down and he understands that. And also with Jim Broadbent at the end, which side he supported.
Yeah.
Of your character. Speaking of Jim Broadbent and the cast, it's an amazing cast. And I was wondering if you could all talk a little bit about the casting process. How did you, Andy, direct these giants of the field? Judi Dench. I mean, you mentioned that scene, which I thought was one of the strongest scenes in the film, the Zeke Heil scene, where she starts going along with that. Can you talk a little bit about directing these great actors?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that scene, because when I came on board, the script had gone through a few versions already with Eddie and Kellen, and then it developed, obviously, when I came in, but there were some scenes and sequences that were just almost like a base note of the narrative, and they were already there, and they never went anywhere, because they were just so good. And that was one of the scenes, and it felt, and in fact, it's like when you read any script or any project, that scene was definitely such a hook. And this was before we'd even sort of talked about Judi Dench. And then talking about Judi in context of a scene like that, just the idea of almost on a kind of meta level, kind of playing with an audience's idea of this national treasure, Judi Dench, Sieg Heiling. It's a very, just as a kind of snapshot, it's a very sort of potent kind of poster image. And it was the idea of what Judi could bring to the table in the context of a sequence like that, beyond probably any other actor I can think of, is that, for more than one generation now, several generations, we've kind of grown up with Judi Dench. We love Judi Dench. And it's the idea that we feel like we know her, and the idea that we come into this film, we come into the parlor of the school with her and the girls. And then we have to address the fact that here is a woman who is being seduced by fascism and who is kind of flirting around the edges of these kind of Nazi ideals. And the fact that it's Judi playing that character, and it's kind of going against the grain of perhaps what we may expect the Judi Dench persona is. that I think it brings something just a little bit more delicious to the table in terms of the drama. That was a very long scene. That was one of our sort of, I suppose, heavier days, just in terms of, as you talked about, I think this film, it was a meeting of kind of two genres in a way. It was like the wrong man thriller, especially sort of the classic Hitchcockian wrong man thriller, and the sort of the high school movie, but more in a kind of British context. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, To Serve with Love, maybe Dead Poet Society we talked about. And so obviously a lot of our dialogues about the genres, but obviously we had this very dark material at the heart of it. And I think there were just one or two scenes that really kind of lent into that. And you were reminded of, I suppose, a responsibility as a filmmaker. And, let's not forget, these young actresses playing these German girls, they were German. And so the weight of all that was on their shoulders. And it was, for some, it was an emotional day. It sort of the weight of history and what it meant, I guess, to them and what it meant to maybe, their grandparents. This all came up, and we actually took a break from the film another day. And I remember, Eddie, didn't we? We all sort of corralled together and had a little kind of pep talk about Trump and about why we were making this film and about why it was important to make a film like this. You never stop learning, and I think that was a sort of, that was definitely sort of a learning curve in terms of looking after your cast. That was, and with Judy, the glib answer is with Judy and Jim, you just kind of get out of the way and let them do what they do. But I guess we were just so thrilled that they had reacted so warmly to the material. I think I think, the relationship you have with the director, the younger actors, is different to the Jims and the Judys. I think the Jims and the Judys is like, you just keep a steady hand on the tiller. And, you're aware of the tone of the film, and you're aware of like your end objective and where you're trying to get to. And you just make sure that, you steer it in that direction. It was a thrill to work with both of them.
Can I just add to that we know from spoken testimony of someone who was there as an English au pair, that they did used to listen to the radio, and they listened to Hitler's speeches, and they were saluting the radiogram. I know that. So that scene there did really happen. And we've got a picture from the Times with the girls all doing Nazi salutes up in London when a German. So they were quite happy to do Nazi salutes in the middle of Britain, even though it would seem inappropriate. And I think it's Kell's idea that a Frau Rochow ran the place. So a Frau Rochow, as opposed to a Miss Rochow, which is Fräulein Rochow, ran the actual place, but she was German. I think, Kell, it was your idea to make her British, wasn't it? Which I think is a beautiful idea. And then we said, and then it was like, well, Judy could play that character. And then she's got all the fact of a British person who's been beguiled by fascist, extreme right-wing ideas and floating towards that direction. So I think that was Kell's idea.
Yeah. Well, in that one scene, you really see how someone could be swept into the energy of it. And then she talks about Hail Victory, and, taking it, just translating it changes the feel of it. You know what I mean? From Sieg Heil, which we have a certain image of what that is, and then Hail Victory. Doesn't sound quite.
It makes it slightly more present in a weird way, but that's what they were saying. And so everyone could get, for the Nazis, it was a clever trick, I suppose, because everyone hailed victory, victory to the German people. You could get behind that kind of thing. But we take it as meaning death to all people who are not us. Yeah. That's what you take to Sieg Heil to me. And later on, it becomes Heil Hitler. They weren't saying Sieg Heil, they were saying Heil Hitler. And the other thing of the word is Der Führer, just that. That just means the leader. I mean, it's kind of a stupid name, really. Call me the leader. He insisted everyone called him the leader. Call him the leader. I mean, where is your ego if you have to have everyone call you the leader? Just call him chief, boss, whatever. But he actually has to come up with a word. But the Führer seems like, oh, it's a special word. It just means the leader. So it actually is just kind of an ordinary word. But it gets all this thing because people keep repeating it over again as if it's some sort of mystical word. you have to play that down because these people were just liars and gangsters and mass murdering. Yeah, I've used very strong words for the mass murdering monsters. That's essentially what Hitler was. So,
yeah. I'm going to ask you just one question that I noticed at the beginning of the film. The blackboard has all these homophones, words like flower, FLOUR, /flower, FLOWER, CSEA, CSEE. Was that intentional about somehow were you kind of cueing us in about things are not what they appear to be, or what were your thoughts behind that? Just a little detail.
I think you're trying to make me look more clever than I am.
Yeah, let's go with it. Yeah, absolutely. We planned that from the off, but yeah. I think, who would that be, Andy? Who would have done that?
It sounds like Dave at Stand By
Dave, it sounds like a Dave, yeah.
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 It's got Dave's fingerprints all over it. Yeah.
But
yeah, no, well spotted, but my head was elsewhere, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But that was the previous, just teaching, things that would trip up a German speaker trying to speak English.
Yeah.
But we'll go with. Now, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, or what happens when you in the film, making process is that all of a sudden there's 30 writers, authors on the piece, all sort of adding into it. I always refer to there's a moment in our first film Andy and I did about Dylan Thomas, and our art director made these paper hats and gave them to the characters, and we all wore these paper hats. And it's just such a brilliant piece of storytelling that wasn't in the script, but the art director comes and adds another layer to the piece, and they're just building on whatever you lay down. But I think the intention is absolutely to sort of to keep the sort of the drumbeat going, is to give the audience these moments of unsettling, of seeding doubt, of everything is not quite what it seems, because we're about to playing the tonal thing of having the young girls and seeing it sometimes through their eyes, having Judi Dench play this type of character. It sort of guides us in a way that sometimes if you do it deftly enough and with a lightness of touch, you can travel sort of quite far with this story by playing the monster in the man and the man in the monster, as we sort of will say. And so I think whether it was not intentional of any of ours or there, I think it was intention that all the way through we're just sort of reminding people is, it's not is all what it seems.
Right.
Throughout, because otherwise, when you get this shock and surprise, it's too much. People don't buy it. You have to sort of unsettle them in some way. And how did you get on with the young girls? Because they're fantastic, aren't they, in the film?
Yeah, really fantastic. Especially that girl that Gretel was.
Yeah,
she was great. And actually, Kellen, your character was one of those characters where you weren't sure how to view him. He becomes kind of a hero, but you think maybe he's the thug. I like that little shift.
Thank you very much. I think we love those characters. We love these shadowy figures that turn up halfway through a movie with a trench coat and a gun. And I got to drive a really big old car really quickly, which was great fun. But I guess it's there to shadow. It's the opposite. Carla Yuri is sweetness and light, and turns out to be what she is, and then the disfigured monosyllabic thug turns out to be the one with a heart, and his sort of, and James's character's the other flip. And it's all that sort of dealing with, book by a cover, if you want to be really general about it, but it works, what I mean? Or the idea of the scars of the past. How do we show these characters? You can't, it's very, very difficult to hide a disfigurement. And, you see somebody with that coat and they must have been in the First World War. So they are already telling some sort of story, which is useful at this point in the story that we're telling. So I enjoyed it. I mean, because we wear so many hats, it's one of those things where, I've got a laptop on my knee with half my face in prosthetics. sort of working on the rewrites for the next day while, you know, Eddie is running across a field dodging bullets and Andy's directing at 10 to a dozen. So thank goodness the character was quite sort of straightforward and simple. You know, I quite enjoyed being the person who just sort of runs up the stairs with a gun, kicks down a door.
There's one thing we also like that I wanted from the beginning, which is quite apart from Thomas Miller being half British and half German. I'd like the idea of the heavies being British, because you always think the heavies are going to be the Germans, but the heavies in this are two guys from the Cabinet Office, which is like your NSA in America, even though it doesn't really exist. But we've made the Cabinet Office be your NSA. So they're kind of CIA, they're kind of FBI, but they're other guys who do some bloody thing. I still don't know quite what the NSA does in America, but they seem to just float around. And I like the idea that guys turn up with passes that no one could even, what is that pass? But they could just go anywhere, do anything. And they are rough. They were charming, but rough, you know, deadly. And no one could stop them. So I love that for Graham Willis.
Yeah, I'm very early on. We were the sequence that I always enjoy, and I hope you and your audiences do as well, is how that whole section of when Thomas is upstairs in the room and the tea party is happening downstairs. And very early on, Andy was a big advocate for Al Bowley, and why not Al Bowley sort of screams cinema and the record and the chandelier, and it was just a sequence. It was very much like the girls listen to the radio, the Sea Kyle sequence. It was one of those that it was the fire in the crucible of the film, of a real good centerpiece from the moment Thomas is brought into the house, back into the lion's den with all the girls, with them playing outside. And just as an audience member, never mind as a filmmaker in this, it's delight. I love those moments in films like that, where all these layers are playing at the same time. And yet it's sort of on the down low where all hell's breaking loose upstairs. So
I mean, you should say that was the actual school still exists. The building that the school was in is still there. You can go. It's being turned into flats at the moment. Me and Judy visited it when it was, and Kel, didn't we visit?
We did, yes. Yeah.
We did. They told us there's a ghost on the top floor of a young girl, which is very interesting. And it was at Home for Dementia when we were there. And so I went there once with Cal, once with Judy, and we were shown around. And it's now flats, but always there's a staircase in there, which is a smaller staircase for the place that we use, Gethty Aya, I think it's called. Andy, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And in Wales, that's a star character in its own self, that building. And to go up those stairs, they were so good, those stairs. And the girls, Andy lined them up in a perfect line at the top, and they're just staring down. So we had a scene like this in our minds from very early on, and to go up that staircase is just beautiful. And it's the steady camera, and it's coming down. It's just every time I see it, I just love it, because they're just so accusatory, those faces, or accusatory and bemused at the same time. What is going on with this person?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it calls attention to the beautiful production design of the whole film. And, you know, even that bus, that old bus, amazing.
Yeah.
I realize we're kind of running out of time. Is there anything else anybody wants to say before?
I'm gonna, on one little detail thing, that bus was Charlie's bus hire. My granddad was Charlie, and he did drive a bus. So again, there's things that we put into that we wanted to happen. And there is a Pevensey Castle, which was actually a different castle that we used, but Pevensey Castle is there, and Eastbourne. And there's one day when the police are chasing Thomas on the beach, and he goes up to this pinnacle of rock and looks out, and then he goes down, and the scene continues. All that chase sequence was shot outside the school where I used to go to, and where the scene is set in over in Eastbourne. Bex and Eastbourne are right next to each other, and so that was a wonderful day. We all did that, and then Cal was there, and you were first ADing on that day, Cal, and I was doing location managing, because we just had this one extra day where everyone sort of did it for because we could, just because we got that thing. So
bag of chips.
Like kids, it was like kids playing, and I was lying on the beach where I'd played as a child, a 7-year-old, and you'll see that bit where I got to the top of a pinnacle of chalk rock, and I look over the edge, and people were saying to me, "That looks rather dangerous." And I said, "It's not dangerous. I did this when I was 7." And then I went up there next time and thought, actually, this is rather dangerous. But I just I knew it since I was a kid, so it doesn't feel dangerous to me. But anyway, there you go.
I mean,
I
with
think there's
a line that kind of has always sort of rung true, and I think if there's something to carry away, it's sort of Jim Broadbent's line of childhood is made of a few summers. And
Yes.
going throughout this, we were really adamant to hang on to the hearts and minds of these young people, to tell this story, to get that lesson from history, as Eddie mentions, you know, throughout the film, by having this redemptive tale of trying to save one of those girls, if not all of them, throughout the film. And I find that very moving. So I'm really thrilled this film, because it's an indie movie, but yet it's made with such ambition and heart and scale and production value, and it's really there to, yes, there's messages in there, but also to entertain and thrill. And everybody who's been watching it is saying how much of a good time they have, and how well it's directed and shot, and how great Eddie is in the role, and all the cast stars. So I'm really proud of it. And I just, sorry that I've never been to San Francisco. And I just wish we were in the city near the Golden Gate Bridge, sharing, you know, toasting it with you, and just appreciate the support that people give, because this is the reward really, where people get to enjoy what we've worked so hard to deliver. And I hope the world see this amazing performance by Eddie, and the team that Andy led so beautifully in making a film that doesn't usually get made anymore. So just aside from it, I'm just a fan. So thank you very much.
Well, we're fans too, and thank you all of you for being.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Oh,
Thanks,
cheers.
Harry.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.